The Forgotten Senses. Introduction. You've been taught to believe that reality begins and ends with what you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. These five senses are your full connection to life, that anything outside their reach is fantasy. But what if that's the greatest illusion of all? The ancients knew something we've forgotten. Mystics, initiates, and theosophical masters whispered a secret that stretches through time. You were not born with just five senses. You were born with seven. Five of them let you survive. But the other two, they let you awaken. You see, you weren't designed to merely navigate the physical world. You were made to feel energy, to know beyond logic, to sense beyond the material. Two sacred senses, intuition and clair-sentience, were built into your spiritual anatomy, not as mystical gifts for the chosen few, but as natural instruments of your soul. They weren't lost, just buried, dormant, waiting for you to remember. From birth, you were trained to rely on the outer world. You were told to believe only what your eyes could verify, your hands could hold, and your ears could measure. But what about the sudden hunch you couldn't explain, the gut feeling that saved you, the way you knew something was wrong before it ever happened? That wasn't a coincidence. That was your sixth sense, intuition, speaking. It bypasses logic. It doesn't argue, it simply knows. It's the same sense that whispers when someone's smile hides pain, that tugs at your chest when a decision is wrong, that delivers full truth in an instant, not through words, but through resonance. This is not just instinct. It's a spiritual organ linked to your causal body, the layer of your being that holds soul memory, karmic direction, and divine intelligence. It's the voice of your higher self, always speaking beneath the noise. And then there's the seventh sense, a clair-sentience, the ability to feel what cannot be seen, to sense the atmosphere of a room, the pain behind a mask, the energy of a place or person. This is the realm of healers and empaths. But more than that, it's a human birthright, a sensitivity that lives in the etheric and astral bodies, constantly scanning, receiving, responding to the world behind the world. You've used it all your life. You just didn't know it had a name, but why were these senses hidden? Why did the world teach you to ignore them? Because a person who feels deeply, who knows without proof, who listens to their soul, cannot be controlled. So society taught you to ridicule the unseen, to mock the mystical, to silence your inner voice. By the age of 7, most children have already been disconnected from their subtle perception. The antennae of the spirit snapped, and yet you can return. You were always meant to, through stillness, through silence, through breath, dream, ritual, meditation. These are not superstitions, they are technologies of reconnection, tools passed down through spiritual lineages that knew how to awaken what lies dormant. Theosophy called it Buddhic awareness. The Vedic sages called it jnana, knowing without learning. The mystics called it divine perception, the ability to see the soul behind the mask of flesh. Once these senses reactivate, your life changes. You no longer move blindly. You feel more, know more, sense more. You begin to navigate reality with your whole self, not just the five-sense body, but the multidimensional being you've always been. You are not a machine of meat and mind. You are a layered field of light, a soul traveling through dimensions. And your senses are how you remember the truth. These extra senses are not extras at all. They are essential. They are sacred. They are you. You were born with 7, and now it's time to use them all. Chapter 1. The Lie of the Physical Senses. They told you to trust your eyes. That's what you see is what is real. That which you hear, touch, taste, and smell is the totality of the world around you. From the moment you took your first breath, they began weaving the illusion that your 5 physical senses were the only bridges to reality, and anything beyond them belonged to the realm of fantasy. And so you believed them. You walked through life relying on those 5 doors, those narrow openings into a much vaster field. But deep inside, in a place beneath language and before thought, something in you knew this wasn't the full truth. Something whispered that the world is not only what it appears to be, that something more was reaching for you from beyond the veil, something you could feel but not quite explain. The five senses, sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, are not lies in themselves, but they are incomplete. They are not the source of truth. They are filters, translators, instruments tuned to only the densest layer of experience. They do not reveal reality. They reveal slices of it, slivers. They are limited by the physical structure of your body, bound by the material plane. Your eyes can see only a fraction of the light spectrum. Your ears hear only a narrow range of vibrations. Your skin, your tongue, your nose. They all serve a world of density, a world of form. But what about what lies beyond that form? What science now confirms is what mystics knew millennia ago. Matter is mostly empty space. What appears solid is an illusion of frequency, of vibration slowed down. And yet you were taught to worship this illusion. You were conditioned to believe that anything not confirmed by the five senses must not be real. That instinct was just a coincidence. That intuition was imagination. That inner knowing was a delusion. But this was not education, it was suppression. Modern society, driven by materialism and controlled perception, has locked you into a prison of the physical. The ruling paradigms of science, culture, and even religion have rejected the non-visible as irrelevant or dangerous. But this was not always the case. In ancient civilizations, perception was not confined to the surface. The soul was known to have many layers, and with each layer came new faculties of awareness. There is a reason the world trains you out of your intuitive senses from the time you are a child. Because when those inner senses are active, you cannot be deceived, you cannot be manipulated. You begin to feel what others are hiding. You begin to know things without learning them. You begin to perceive truth, not through data, but through direct resonance. When you walked into a room and felt tension in the air before anyone spoke, was that one of your five senses? When you dreamed of something before it happened, or sensed someone's pain without them uttering a word, was that part of the physical package? Of course not. And yet, it was real. Realer than the surface-level experiences your body collects each day. Those moments were glimpses. Echoes of the higher senses are buried in your spiritual anatomy. According to the esoteric teachings of Theosophy, Rudolf Steiner's spiritual science and ancient mystical traditions, you were born with 7 senses. The 5 that govern your interaction with the material world are just the beginning. The 6th is intuition, a direct channel to the higher mind, a knowing beyond reason. The 7th is clair-sentience, the ability to feel energy, emotion, and subtle presence across space and time. These senses do not operate through the body, but through the finer bodies layered within and around you. The etheric, astral, and causal sheaths that the soul uses to interface with other dimensions of being. These are not symbolic ideas. They are living truths that mystics, prophets, and spiritual adepts have explored for thousands of years. In the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece, students were trained to activate their inner vision. In the Vedic and Buddhist traditions, the awakened senses were pathways to liberation. In Christianity's mystical roots, saints spoke of divine hearing, seeing, and knowing that came not through the flesh, but through the spirit. You too were born with these faculties. As a child, you may have used them freely, imagining things that felt more real than the world around you, speaking to invisible friends, sensing the atmosphere of a place long before anyone else could. But little by little you were trained to shut them down, to tune out the invisible, to rely only on what could be measured and confirmed by others. And in that forgetting, a fracture occurred. You began to mistake the part for the whole. But these senses never left you. They were not erased, only suppressed. And now they are waking up. Around the world, people are beginning to see with new eyes. They are remembering that there is more to life than what can be calculated. They are hearing the silent guidance that speaks in symbols and signals, not in sound. They are feeling the truth behind the mask of appearances. This is not new. This is ancient. But it is returning, because it must. The world is changing. The veil between dimensions is thinning. The time has come for humanity to reclaim the full spectrum of perception, not as fantasy, but as birthright, not as an escape, but as an awakening. This audiobook is an invitation to that remembering, a path back to the totality of your perception. Because the truth is, you were never meant to live with only 5 senses. You are far more than a body. You are not just an observer of reality. You are its co-creator, and the keys to that creation lie in the senses you've forgotten. In the next chapter, we will step into the 6th sense, intuition. We will explore how this silent faculty speaks, how it bypasses logic, and how it is not a mystical power reserved for the gifted, but a natural sense that belongs to you, one that has been waiting for you to listen. Chapter 2. The 6th sense, intuition as soul language. There is a voice inside you that speaks in silence. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it doesn't explain. But when it speaks, you know. It's the sense you've used 1,000 times without realizing. The sense that kept you from entering the wrong room, or pushed you toward the right decision, even when logic said no. The sense that whispered, "This isn't right," when your mind said, "Everything looks fine." The one that told you to turn around, to pause, to say yes, to say no, to run, to trust, to wait. That voice is not imagination. It's not emotion. It's not instinct. It is intuition, your 6th sense, the direct perception of truth, unfiltered by logic, untainted by fear. And you were born with it. Long before you learned how to think, you knew. Long before you could explain your choices, you were guided. Children live close to this sense. They feel the truth of things before they're taught to question it. They know who is safe, what feels right, when something is off. But then we grow up. We learn to silence that knowing, to choose reason over resonance, to call doubt intelligence. And slowly the channel grows quiet. But intuition never leaves. It waits, quietly, behind the static of your mind. It is the voice of your soul, the signal of your higher self, and it's always trying to reach you. Unlike your 5 physical senses, intuition doesn't need time. It doesn't gather data. It sees through things. It delivers full-picture knowing in an instant. It doesn't need evidence. It is the evidence. That's why it often feels irrational to the ego, because it doesn't arrive in words or numbers. It arrives in resonance, a sense of alignment, a sudden clarity, a subtle shift in energy that changes everything. And yet, because we are conditioned to worship logic, we often ignore it. We override it. We think our way out of our knowing, only to realize too late that we knew all along. You've felt it. Maybe you met someone and something inside you recoiled. Even though they smiled and said all the right things, later you discovered why. Or perhaps you felt compelled to take a different route home, only to find that your usual path was blocked. Maybe a person's words said one thing, but something in your body knew they were lying. That wasn't paranoia. That wasn't luck. That was your intuition, tuned in, active, speaking in the language of direct perception. The mystics of every tradition honored this faculty. To them, it wasn't a magical power. It was a higher organ of perception. In ancient Egypt, it was called the Eye of Horus, the inner eye that sees beyond illusion. In the Vedic tradition, it corresponds to the 3rd eye chakra, the seat of insight and inner vision. In Theosophy, it is the expression of the causal body, the immortal soul speaking to the waking mind. It is not found in the brain, though the brain receives its impressions. It flows from the spiritual dimension of your being, the layer that remembers all things, that is not bound by time, and that sees your life from the mountain, not the maze. You don't need to create intuition. You only need to clear the noise that blocks it. Noise comes in many forms: overthinking, anxiety, external pressure, and social conditioning. Every time you silence yourself to please others, every time you doubt your inner sense to follow the crowd, every time you distract yourself from stillness, you add another layer of static. That's why intuitive clarity feels like remembering. Not a new thought, but a truth you always knew. The great teachers and visionaries of the world did not build their lives on logic alone. They followed inner vision. Joan of Arc heard voices. Nikola Tesla saw his inventions in his mind before building them. Carl Jung called it active imagination. Steve Jobs trusted what he called the dots that connect only in hindsight. They were all navigating not by intellect, but by a deeper compass. And so can you. The first step is to trust the feeling before the fact. Learn to observe the gentle pull, the subtle shift, the unspoken yes or no that arises before your thoughts begin to analyze. The second is to practice stillness. Intuition does not fight to be heard. It waits for silence. It waits for you to lower the volume of the world so that you can finally hear your own soul. Meditation, journaling, being in nature. These are not spiritual cliches. They are the sacred practices that clear the fog and reopen the channel. Because intuition does not speak in drama. It speaks in person. The more you trust it, the stronger it gets. The more you obey its whispers, the louder it becomes. And soon you will begin to live from that space, making decisions not from fear or approval, but from alignment. This is the great return, from outer noise to inner knowing, from the static of the world to the signal of your soul. And once this sense is awakened, you will never move blindly again. You will walk through the world with a different kind of vision, one that sees what cannot be seen, knows what cannot be taught, and guides you through what cannot be explained. Because intuition is not a luxury, it is your birthright. It is the first of the forgotten senses. And now, it remembers you. In the next chapter, we'll explore the seventh sense, the mysterious power of clair-sentience, the ability to feel energy, emotion, and vibration directly through the subtle body. This is the sense that allows you to perceive truth without words and presence without form. The empathic organ of the awakened soul. Your senses are returning, and this journey has only just begun. Chapter 3. The seventh sense. Clair-sentience and energetic feeling. There are things you can feel that have no weight, things that have no voice but still speak, things that live beneath the skin of words and yet strike you harder than a scream. You've felt them. You've walked into a room and known without a word that something was wrong. You've stood beside someone smiling and sensed the storm hiding behind their eyes. You've touched an object, visited a place, met a stranger, and something stirred in your chest, something ancient and invisible, telling you there's more beneath the surface. That sense, the one that speaks without sound, that vibrates instead of speaks, is your seventh sense. It's called clair-sentience, and it may be the most misunderstood of them all. It is the forgotten art of feeling energy. Not emotional empathy, not psychological projection, but a deep spiritual perception, the ability to feel the subtle fields that surround people, places, objects, and even thoughts. It's not just about emotion, it's about vibration. Clair-sentience is the sacred organ that lets you sense the invisible architecture of the world. While intuition gives you a knowing, clair-sentience gives you a feeling, raw, primal, immediate. Not through your mind, but through your energy body. It is your soul's skin, touching the soul of everything around you. And the truth is, you've always had it. You've just never been taught to trust it. Theosophists describe clair-sentience as a faculty of the astral and etheric bodies, subtle layers of your being that interpenetrate your physical form like an energetic mist. These bodies aren't metaphors. They're real, living fields of frequency that extend beyond your flesh. They are the antennae of your being, and through them you feel what the eyes cannot see. You feel the truth behind the mask, the sadness behind the laughter, the energetic residue of places long after their events. You feel the intention, not just the action. In our modern world, this power has been pathologized, labeled as oversensitivity, called weakness, dismissed as emotional noise. But in reality, clair-sentience is one of the most advanced forms of perception a human can possess. It is the nervous system of the spirit, the quiet voice that speaks not through symbols or ideas, but through resonance. And like a tuning fork, your body vibrates in response to the energy around you. If someone is angry, your field tightens. If someone is authentic, your body softens. If a place is heavy with pain, you feel it in your chest before your mind has a chance to explain. You may have spent years calling this anxiety, emotional flooding, panic. But what if you were never broken? What if you were just highly tuned? Empaths, healers, and spiritually sensitive beings throughout history have operated from this seventh sense. It is what allows a mother to sense danger before it happens. What enables a mystic to feel a shift in the collective consciousness? What makes the great spiritual teachers weep in silence before a word is spoken? That they can feel what the world is holding back. This sense doesn't work on command. You can't force it. You can only open to it by becoming still, clear, and grounded in your energy. To awaken it is to return to a more animal intelligence, a more elemental way of being, one where your body is not just a vessel, but a listening field. You become porous, receptive, present. This is why so many clair-sentient people crave solitude. Why do they feel overwhelmed in crowds? Why do they feel drained by false conversations? It's not because they're weak. It's because they're absorbing what others cannot feel, and without training, it can become too much. But once this sense is understood, strengthened, and refined, it becomes a superpower. You begin to move through the world like a radar. You feel what's true before it unfolds. You enter relationships with eyes closed, but senses wide open. You detect manipulation without needing evidence. You sense opportunities before they appear. You know when someone's words align with their soul and when they don't. And most importantly, you begin to feel yourself more clearly, not just your thoughts, not just your surface feelings, but the deeper layers of your being. The ancient stories are written into your cells, the emotional echoes of past lives. The karmic contracts are vibrating beneath your decisions. Clair-sentience is the sense that allows you to remember through sensation. It bypasses thought. It transcends speech. It teaches through experience. To awaken it, you must become still enough to feel subtlety again. You must reclaim your sensitivity, not as a flaw, but as a sacred skill. Spend time in silence. Breathe consciously. Touch the earth. Pay attention to the energy behind the words you speak. Begin to listen, not just with your ears, but with your presence, because presence is the language clair-sentience speaks. And when you live from this sense, life stops being random. It begins to reveal its texture, its rhythm, its hidden song. You no longer just exist. You feel your way into meaning. You merge with the deeper tides of truth. You sense the path before you see it, and in that state, you return to your original design. You were never meant to navigate reality with only 5 senses. You were meant to feel life as vibration, to read energy like breath, to let your spirit respond to the world like a harp to the wind. This is the 7th sense, the final sense, hidden beneath the veil. And it is rising now, because the world needs humans who can feel again, who can listen beneath the noise, who can hold the unseen with reverence. We shall delve deeper into the layers of your existence in the upcoming chapter, examining the subtle bodies that contain and convey these forgotten perceptions, because there is a holy shape hidden behind every faculty that awakens. Your actual perspective is not a random map. It adheres to a plan. Your reintegration from a disjointed observer to a whole and radiant being depends on that design. You have living senses, and you are now too. Chapter 4. The Subtle Bodies. How you feel what isn't physical. You're not one body, you're a constellation of bodies, nested within one another like luminous shells, each vibrating at a different frequency, each tuned to a different layer of reality. The flesh is just the outer garment, the visible part, the mask, but behind it is a being of light, a layered being, a multi-dimensional self woven from energies finer than anything your 5 senses can touch. And yet, you feel them. You know them. You live through them every day, even if no one ever told you they exist. These are the subtle bodies, the deeper layers of your spiritual anatomy. And they are the reason your 6th and 7th senses are possible. They are the reason you can dream, sense, intuit, and receive. They are the vehicles through which your consciousness travels beyond the boundaries of time and space. To know them is to begin remembering who you truly are. Your first layer is the physical body, the one you can see, touch, and measure. It is the most dense, the most temporary. It is your interface with the material world, your vessel for experiencing the dimension of form. But it is not the seat of your awareness. It is not the source of your knowing. It is only the surface. Beyond the physical lies the etheric body, a shimmering template of energy that sustains your life force. It's what animates the physical form. It feeds vitality into your cells, maintains the integrity of your organs, and transmits signals from your higher bodies downward. Healers who work with energy, Reiki practitioners, and sensitive intuitives often sense this layer. It is the closest to the physical and the first to respond to both harmony and harm. When you feel drained after being around someone, before any words are spoken, it is your etheric body that is registering the disturbance. When you walk into a place and sense warmth, tension, or spiritual clarity, it's not your eyes that feel it. It's your etheric field absorbing the atmosphere like a second skin. Beyond the etheric is the astral body, the seat of emotion, desire, and imagination. This is the realm you enter in dreams, in fantasy, in longing. When you love, when you hate, when you burn with passion or fall into despair, it is the astral body that is vibrating. It is a body made not of substance but of shifting emotion and thought forms. The astral world is alive, dynamic, and responsive. It is where much of your karma plays out. It is where intention takes shape before it drops into physical form. When you feel the presence of someone in a dream or sense a loved one who has passed, it is the astral body making contact across realms. It is also the playground of memory and psychic sensitivity. Then comes the mental body, the layer of structured thought, belief, logic, and perception. This is the body that holds your worldview. It carries the programs you inherited from society, from culture, from past lives. It shapes the way you interpret reality, and it too is a body, a vibrating field of organized information. When you change your beliefs, when you challenge inherited patterns, when you rewrite your inner narrative, it is the mental body you are working with. Intuition, when it rises, often conflicts with this body, because the mental field wants order, facts, and proof, while intuition speaks in paradox and feeling. Beyond that lies the causal body, the higher self, the architect of lifetimes. This is the part of you that remembers. It holds the memory of who you are across dimensions. It contains the blueprint of your soul's evolution, the lessons you chose, the experiences you called in, the contracts you made before birth. When your intuition speaks, it comes from here. When you feel guided, watched over, gently nudged toward growth, it is your causal self reaching through the veil. And beyond even this, there are higher bodies still, the Buddhic and Atmic, fields of divine unity and pure being. These are the rarest to touch, but not impossible. In states of deep meditation, spontaneous awakening, or near-death experience, some glimpse these layers. They are the realms where individuality dissolves, where I becomes all, and the illusion of separation ends. Together, these bodies form your full self, and yet, you've been taught to believe you are only one. This fragmentation is the root of human suffering. You feel torn, incomplete, disoriented, because you are living through a single room of a great cathedral. You're walking in your physical body, thinking in your mental body, but rarely feeling the connection to the deeper field that holds it all together. But once you begin to awaken the sixth and seventh senses, once you start feeling and knowing beyond logic, your subtle bodies come online. They begin to harmonize. They begin to inform your choices, your relationships, and your healing. Your energy becomes integrated. Your path becomes clear. You begin to move not as a person, but as a presence. You may find yourself knowing things before they happen, sensing the mood of others without a word, feeling the health of your own system through vibration. You may begin to experience sudden clarity, rapid downloads of insight, emotional releases from past lives, or moments of oneness that transcend space and time. These are not signs of strangeness. They are signs of remembrance. Your subtle bodies are reawakening. Your full self is rising. And with that rise comes power. Not the power of dominance, but the power of alignment, of living in resonance with your total being, in communication with every layer of yourself. The more you honor these bodies through rest, silence, spiritual practice, and mindful presence, the stronger your perception becomes. You become like a crystal tuned to multiple frequencies, able to feel what others can't, to see what others miss, to walk paths hidden to the ordinary eye. And that is not a burden, it is a calling. You were not born to live half alive. You were not designed to experience reality with only 5 doors open. You are a temple of energy, a traveler between worlds, a soul clothed in 7 layers of light. In the next chapter, we'll explore how and why these senses were buried, and the story of how humanity fell asleep to its deeper perception, because only by understanding forgetting can we fully reclaim the awakening. You are remembering now, and the veil is growing thin. Chapter 5. How we lost our senses. You were not always blind. There was a time, not just in ancient history, but in your own soul's memory, when your 7 senses worked in harmony, when your body was not a cage, but a conductor, when you lived in both the visible and the invisible worlds at once, walking the earth while listening to heaven. But that time slipped away. You were born with your full system intact. Your subtle bodies pulsed with light. You felt what others could not say. You sensed danger before it arrived. You heard the voice of your soul in dreams. You responded to people's energy rather than their words. You lived close to the source. And then, the conditioning began. From your earliest years, they taught you to look outward, to seek answers from the world, from books, from voices of authority. You were rewarded for thinking, not for feeling, for repeating, not for knowing, for obeying, not for listening to that silent guidance rising from within. The inner senses were slowly starved, not with violence but with distraction, not with chains but with noise. It began with the subtle shaming of sensitivity. Don't be so emotional. You're imagining things. That's not real. Grow up. You learned that your invisible experiences, the ones you could not explain, were not welcome in a world obsessed with what could be measured. So you buried them. You began to doubt your own knowing. And the voice of intuition, once strong, once clear, faded beneath the static of thought. This was not your fault. It was part of a larger forgetting, a collective amnesia passed down through generations. Once upon a time, in nearly every ancient culture, the unseen was honored. The seers, the mystics, the shamans. These were not fringe figures. They were guides, teachers, anchors of sacred wisdom. The dream world, the energy field, the subtle layers of existence, all were considered real, essential, part of life's greater architecture. But with the rise of empire, dogma, and material conquest, the old ways were buried. Intuition became heresy, feeling became weak, inner truth became dangerous, mystery was replaced with dogma, experience was replaced with belief, wisdom was replaced with obedience, and over time the human being shrank. What was once a radiant multidimensional being became a flesh-bound consumer, taught to ignore the very signals that once guided entire civilizations. The schooling system was designed not to awaken your inner senses, but to standardize you, to mold your perception into narrow channels, to measure your intelligence by how well you can repeat, not how deeply you can see. Your society rewards the loud, the logical, the quantifiable. It fears the subtle, the intuitive, the invisible. And so you learn to betray your own inner compass, to make choices that don't feel right because they make sense, to silence the warnings that rise in your gut, to rationalize your own disconnection, and yet no matter how deeply it is buried, your soul never forgets. There are moments, rare, fleeting, but unforgettable, when the veil lifts. A moment of stillness in nature, a dream that stays with you for weeks, a chance encounter that changes your life, a song, a scent, a silence that pierces through the layers and brings you home, if only for a breath. In those moments, the deeper part of you stirs. You remember that there is more. You feel the ache of a perception lost. You realize that something sacred was taken, and that it's still alive in you, waiting. This chapter of forgetting was not the end. It was a descent, a necessary sleep, because now the world is changing again. The noise is reaching its peak. The systems that once silenced the soul are collapsing. The outer world, in all its noise and glitter, is no longer satisfying the deeper hunger. And in the quiet beneath the chaos, your senses are returning. More and more people are remembering the old ways, not through books, but through inner reactivation. Children are being born with heightened sensitivity, impossible memories, radiant perception. Adults are waking up in the middle of their lives, suddenly aware of energy, intuition, and dreams that feel more real than waking hours. This is not a coincidence, it is not a trend, it is the re-emergence of the full human. The truth is, you cannot lose your inner senses, you can only forget them. But forgetting is not the same as erasure. What has been forgotten can be remembered. What has been buried can be unearthed. What has been silenced can learn to sing again. And the process of remembering does not begin with learning something new. It begins with unlearning what isn't true. You were told that sensitivity is a flaw, that emotion is weakness, that imagination is childish, that knowing without proof is dangerous. But these are not flaws. They are gifts, and they are calling you back to yourself. The path forward is not about becoming something else, it's about becoming whole again, reuniting the five senses with the two that were cast aside, letting the body serve the soul, letting thought bow to knowing, letting your perception expand into the field that was always waiting for you to remember. The forgetting served its purpose. Now the remembering begins, and it begins not with effort, but with presence, with sitting still long enough to hear what never stopped whispering, honoring your sensitivity, your feeling, your insight, not as strange anomalies, but as sacred instruments of perception. In the next chapter, we'll walk the path of reawakening. You'll learn how to activate the sixth and seventh senses again, not by forcing but by listening, not by reaching outward but by returning inward, because the truth you seek has never left you. It was always just waiting for your silence. Chapter 6. Activating the Dormant Senses. There is no switch to flip, no ritual to force. The awakening of your deeper senses does not come through effort, it comes through returning. Because the sixth and seventh senses, intuition and energetic feeling, are not things you must build. They are already there, woven into your being, alive beneath the noise. All you must do is clear the static. You do not sharpen these senses by adding more. You awaken them by removing what never belonged, the tension, the distraction, the constant thinking, the fear of being wrong, the pressure to prove, the compulsive need to explain what your soul already understands. The first step is presence, stillness, listening. Because these senses do not speak in volume, they whisper. They speak when you stop searching, when you soften, when you remember to feel without needing to label. Start here. Turn off the world for a while. Not forever. Just long enough to hear your own frequency again. Unplug. Go where the noise cannot follow. A quiet room, a corner of nature, a space between responsibilities. You don't need hours, just a few minutes of honest silence. Sit, breathe, and listen. Not with your ears, but with your attention. Notice the spaces between your thoughts, the subtle textures of feeling that rise before your mind rushes to name them. That heaviness in your chest, the lightness in your hands, the tingling at the back of your neck, none of it is random. It's your energy body speaking. Over time, you'll begin to feel the difference between inner noise and soul signals. Intuition has a unique rhythm. It arrives gently but with unmistakable clarity. It feels neutral, not charged, not desperate. You won't feel anxious or frantic when it speaks. You'll feel certain, even if you don't know why. Learn to honor that feeling. Obey it without demanding proof. The more you follow your intuition, the clearer it becomes. It's like strengthening a muscle, not through force, but through trust. Next, awaken your seventh sense, the ability to feel energy directly. This begins with awareness of your own field, because you cannot feel others clearly until you've felt yourself. Try this. The next time you're alone, close your eyes and extend your awareness just a few inches beyond your skin. Imagine that you're wrapped in a soft, radiant field, your energy body. Don't try to see it, just feel it. Is it warm or cool, tight or expansive? Does it feel still or agitated? You'll notice that your state is not confined to your body. Your field carries emotion, memory, and intention. You may even sense imprints from your day, places you've been, people you've encountered, thoughts you've entertained. And just by noticing, something incredible begins to happen. The field clears itself, because energy responds to attention. From there, expand your awareness outward. Walk into a room and feel it before you speak. Touch a tree and let your hands listen. Stand near someone and observe your body's response before your mind evaluates them. You'll begin to sense where energy flows and where it stops. You'll feel tension before it's spoken. You'll catch truth in the quiet and deception in the pretty words. You'll know when to step forward and when to walk away, not because of evidence, but because your entire being becomes a compass. To go deeper, begin keeping an intuition journal. Each time you sense something, a hunch, a knowing, a gut feeling, write it down. Later, return to the page and see what unfolded. You'll be shocked at how accurate your irrational knowing was, and with each confirmation, your trust in your higher perception will deepen. Another powerful practice is intentional silence. Don't just sit in silence. Enter it with reverence. Treat it like a sacred doorway. In that space, ask nothing, expect nothing, just feel, just be. In time, you'll begin to receive impressions, insights, images, not from your mind, but from your higher field. Movement helps too. Slow, mindful movement that synchronizes body and breath. Yoga, qigong, walking meditation. These are not just exercises. They are tuning rituals. They bring your awareness into the body, which is the gateway to subtle perception. And of course, spend time in nature. Nature does not block perception, it opens it. A forest is not just trees, it is a field of frequency, a living library of intelligence. Your subtle bodies resonate with natural energy. You'll find that in the quiet of the earth, your inner senses open like flowers toward the sun. Be mindful of what you consume, not just food, but media, conversations, and environments. Everything you take in either supports or clouds your sensitivity. Choose what uplifts, not what numbs. Your soul is listening through every sense. Give it what it can digest. And perhaps most importantly, stop apologizing for your sensitivity. You were not made to be numb. You were not made to filter life through logic alone. You were not made to explain your knowing to a world that forgot how to feel. You were made to perceive deeply, to receive reality, not just through your body, but through your entire being. And every moment you choose presence over performance, silence over stimulation, alignment over approval. You feed those deeper senses. You awaken the parts of you that know, that feel, that see what cannot be seen. This is not about becoming mystical, it is about becoming whole. When the 6 and 7 senses are active, the 5 no longer dominate. They harmonize. They serve the higher intelligence flowing through you. You begin to live not just with eyes open, but with your soul awake. You feel more, know more, but you also suffer less. Because the truth, when felt directly, brings peace. Because knowing, even without proof, brings clarity. You don't need a teacher to unlock these senses. You only need to remember that you are the key. In the next chapter, we will explore what it means to live as a fully sensed being. To move through the world as one who sees the invisible, hears the silence, and feels the truth behind every moment. Not as a mystic in retreat, but as a living presence in a forgetting world. Your senses are no longer dormant. Now, they are waking. and soon they will begin to lead. Chapter 7. Living as a fully sensed being. Once the doors open, they do not close. You begin to feel everything, not in the way you used to, overwhelmed, fragile, unsure, but with strength, with clarity, with reverence, because now you are no longer mistaking feeling for weakness. You have reclaimed it as wisdom. Living with all 7 senses awake is not about becoming mystical, abstract, or removed from the world. It's the opposite. It's about becoming more human than ever before, but in the way humanity was always meant to be. Awake, aware, attuned to both the seen and unseen. You start to move differently through the world. Slower, perhaps. Not because you're lazy, but because you're listening. You don't just hear words anymore, though you feel their weight, their energy, their intention. You don't just walk into rooms, you feel the story the walls carry, the frequency in the air. You notice more, not because you're looking harder, but because you've stopped filtering out the truth. With the 6th sense active, your choices begin to shift. You don't need endless pro and con lists. You know. You feel the right path, not as a thought, but as a resonance. When something is aligned, it hums inside you. When something is wrong, no matter how attractive it looks, it collapses in your chest. With the 7th sense awakened, your relationships deepen. You no longer need people to tell you how they feel. You can feel it. You can walk into a conversation and sense what's really being said beneath the words. You develop a silent compassion because now you understand. Everyone is carrying something unseen. Everyone is transmitting more than they speak, and most have forgotten how to listen. This awareness does not isolate you. It softens you. It makes you more real. It allows you to show up in the world not as a role or an idea, but as a presence. You don't have to impress. You don't have to convince. You simply are. And that beingness radiates. People feel it even when they don't understand it. You start to live in sync with the rhythm of life itself. No longer forcing, no longer pushing against what is. You learn to ride the current. You learn to trust the stillness. You say yes to the invitation that intuition offers. You say no when the energy contracts. You listen. You move. You follow the whisper, not the noise. And slowly, life begins to organize around your true self. Synchronicities multiply. Decisions simplify. Clarity becomes the norm, not the exception. You begin to experience something that used to sound like a myth, flow. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped resisting what is. You're no longer a disconnected observer. You've become a participant in the great field of intelligence that is always moving, guiding, responding. You'll notice that some things fall away. Certain relationships, jobs, patterns, they may dissolve, but not because you failed, because your vibration changed, because you're no longer willing to abandon your knowing just to maintain someone else's comfort. You stop betraying yourself, you stop shrinking to fit in, and that changes everything. Living as a fully sensed being also comes with responsibility, because when you feel more, you're called to live with greater integrity. You can no longer pretend not to know what you know. You can't go back to sleep. You can't ignore your body's warnings. You can't lie to yourself without consequence. But this is not a burden. This is a gift. The gift of living honestly, clearly, deeply. You start to feel the soul of everything, even objects, even places, even silence. You begin to relate to life as a living being, not a background for your personal story. You treat your food with reverence, your words with care. Your time is sacred. You are not perfect, you are not immune to pain. But now your pain becomes a teacher, not a prison. Your emotions become messengers, not threats. Your discomfort becomes direction, pointing you to what needs to be healed, honored, or released. You live in dialogue with the world, not a monologue of thoughts, but a dynamic exchange of sensation, symbol, intuition, and resonance. You begin to understand the language of life, the dreams, the signals, the encounters that speak without speaking. This is what it means to be fully alive. And you begin to see others differently too. You no longer judge them by their surface. You feel their field. You sense their potential. You notice the ways they've silenced their own senses, and you offer space, not to fix them, but to witness them. Your presence becomes a catalyst. Without effort, without preaching, without needing to be understood, you begin to change the world. Not by pushing it, but by vibrating in truth, by embodying what others have forgotten, by showing, simply by your being, that more is possible. And in this way the world begins to heal. One awakened presence touches another. One honest moment inspires 1,000 more. One soul, fully sensed, becomes a lighthouse for others still lost in the fog. This is your calling now. You are not here just to survive. You are not here just to function. You are here to feel, to know, to awaken, and to live in harmony with the full range of your perception. The 5 senses were never the limit. They were only the beginning. You have remembered the 6th intuition, the compass of the soul. You have remembered the 7th, energetic feeling, the deep sensitivity of spirit. You have remembered your subtle bodies, the instruments of unseen wisdom. You have remembered yourself, not as a brain in a body, but as a field of consciousness. Now, let the remembering become a way of life. Breathe, feel, listen, walk softly, speak clearly, and trust what you sense. The world will not always understand, but your soul does, and it will guide you home. You are no longer fragmented. You are no longer asleep. You are fully sensed, fully present, and fully alive. Closing transmission, the return of the whole human. You have come a long way, not in distance, but in remembrance, from the world of surfaces into the depths of perception, from the noise of the mind into the whisper of the soul, from 5 fractured senses into a being of full awareness. You are no longer just watching life pass by. You are in it, receiving it, translating it through every layer of your being. You see now that your body is not your limit, it is your temple, that your thoughts are not your enemy, they are instruments waiting to serve the deeper rhythm, that your feelings are not too much, they are the sacred language of energy, that your sensitivity is not weakness, it is evidence that you were never separate from life. You were born with 7 senses because you were never meant to live halfway. You were meant to remember, to restore, to realign your inner compass to the truth that was always there, the truth that you are a light moving through layers, a soul clothed in frequencies, a presence that does not end at the edge of skin. Now you know how to listen to silence, how to feel what isn't said, how to trust what isn't logical, how to live in the quiet power of your intuition and let it lead. You have remembered the forgotten senses, and in doing so, you've remembered yourself, not the self others named, not the self shaped by rules and roles, but the self that existed before the noise, before the fear, before the forgetting. This is not the end of your journey. It is the return to your starting point, with eyes now open, with presence now whole, with perception now restored. So walk forward not as a seeker but as one who sees. Speak, not to convince, but to resonate. Choose not to conform, but to align. Let the sacred senses guide you. Let the unseen become your compass. Let the whisper of your soul be louder than the world's demands. The age of numbness is ending. The era of fragmented perception is fading. What is rising is you. The whole human, the radiant perceiver, the one who no longer denies the mystery but walks in it. You are no longer bound by the illusion that you are only what you can touch. You are a bridge between worlds, a weaver of energy, a living symphony of 7 sacred senses. And now that you remember, live that way.